Yeah, it was very exciting. And the story of going to Sierra Leone is one of those strange stories, because when I was again in junior high school, I started corresponding. A teacher brought around a list of names, and I just grabbed one, and it happened to be somebody from Sierra Leone. And so I started corresponding with him, and so we sort of followed each other through high school and into college. We just kept writing and writing and writing. And one day on campus, I think I was a junior, and the Peace Corps was recruiting. And so I went to the little recruiting session, and I thought, well, that really sounds great. And I thought it's also an opportunity to go to Africa. And so I applied, and fortunately I was accepted into the program for Sierra Leone. Going there, I thought of like getting back to roots. And when I arrived, it was very, very different from what I expected, because I'd grown up on TV watching a couple of series based in Africa, and I thought, well, that's what it's going to be like, and it was nothing like that at all. And so going there, I had this expectation that it was going to be very, very out in the jungle and so forth, and it wasn't. It was outside of a small village, but it was nothing like TV, and I think that's probably one of the first things that I realized. You know, even though you're a college graduate, you still have those images. And so going there was a wonderful experience, meeting the people and being accepted. This was during the war in Vietnam, and so there's a lot of anti-Americanism going around. However, once you get there and meet people, it's completely different. They may not like what your government is doing, but they judge you according to what you do. And we're supposed to be, as Peace Corps volunteers, we're supposed to be ambassadors, sort of personal ambassadors, and that's the way it turned out. And I found that being a black person in Africa, there was a great deal of interest, because most volunteers were white, which is the majority population. And so there's a great deal of interest, you know, to have a black person there in the Peace Corps. And so it's really interesting that you're an immediate role model because you have a college degree, which is what a lot of the students there, I taught secondary school, and they're aspiring to that, and here's someone of the same hue who has achieved this, and so that was really great.
So you were one of the few African Americans that were in the Peace Corps at the time.
Yeah. In fact, in our training group, I think there were 89 of us who went over there, and there were, by my count, I think 5 or 6 of us who were black.
Okay.
And in my school, I was the only one.
You were the only one, yeah. So, sir, what do you consider as some of the best takeaways from that experience?
There are a lot of them. It was one of the best experiences in my life. But in terms of what I learned, I think number one, I learned how to teach. And I had taken education classes at college, and I had done student teaching, if you will, in the Washington, D.C. Area as part of the Peace Corps training. But, and we had support. But once I was out in Sierra Leone, really out in the bush, I had some support from the other Peace Corps volunteers, but there's no supervision, and there was no curriculum. And in fact, there was no book. So I learned how to create curriculum. I shouldn't say I learned how to. I used my experiences. The DC experience taught how to do that, but I had to basically start from scratch. I have no one to tell me you're doing this right, that wrong, and so forth. And after about 2 weeks of teaching old style, the British rote method where they basically have students memorize things, I thought this is not the way to learn. And so I started teaching students how to write from outlines and then start thinking about the topics themselves. It was, to me, something new and exciting. To the students, it was something that was dreadful, because they were used to one particular method, and here is an entirely different method. And for the first year, most of the students sort of took to it, but some of the students, especially the older ones, they couldn't stand it at all. and they did not like my teaching at all.
Because they were used to a certain
They were
way,
used to
yeah.
doing it a certain way, and as far as they're concerned, the only way to learn is to memorize things. And so when I'm saying, I'm not going to write out things for you to copy down and then memorize and then regurgitate. I'm going to give you an outline, we're going to talk about this, you ask questions so that you better understand it.
Yeah.
They weren't used to that.
Right.
And they were only 2 years away from the examination that determines whether they go to college or not. And going to college meant they advance themselves. Not means they go back to their village, back to their towns, and they're no longer these superstars, because if you're in high school there, you are kind of a superstar. If you don't go past it, then you go back and you're not looked up to as much.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the resistance. So one thing is learning to teach pretty much on my own. A second one, I lived among the Mende in Sierra Leone, and one of the things that I took away that is still with me is their lifestyle. It is very candid, and it is, and this I've learned since, is typical West African, well actually African lifestyle, living each day, one day at a time. And to think that whatever you do, this is the day that you have to do it. And when tomorrow comes, if tomorrow comes, it's a gift, and it's another chance to basically do that. So living one day at a time and being candid. Sometimes, you know, we have a term, brutally honest. I don't think it was brutal, but it was honest. And so the way that you conduct yourself, the way that I conduct myself, is to be as honest as I can, and to realize that today is the day that you get to do something, and not to sort of, well, maybe tomorrow, and maybe because tomorrow may not come. And so that is part of my lifestyle. And I think putting the two of those together, a third thing is in terms of teaching, that I learned that I'm not teaching, like right now I'm described as a teacher of history and humanities. In the Peace Corps, I taught geography, which was my minor, and mathematics, specifically algebra and geometry, because in high school it was one of my favorite subjects, and I tutored when I was in college. But I learned in Sierra Leone that you don't teach subjects, you teach people. And so, on a short conversation, if you say, what do you do? I say, I'm a history teacher. If we had a long conversation, I would say, I use history to teach people. And so the focus is on people, not on the subject matter.